This episode of the Lunch with Chris show is brought to you by my upcoming book, 30 Days to Limitless. You can find out more about it at limitless30.com.
This podcast is certified fresh. Freshmediaworks.com.
Welcome to the Lunch with Chris show, where your host, Chris Daly, talks with movers and shakers from all walks of life to get their opinions on important questions. Each season, there is a new question and new guests. This short, impactful show skips all the fluff and just brings you insightful answers from great guests. And now, doing his part to change the world in a positive way, your host, Chris Daly.
Hey everybody, welcome out to another Lunch with Chris show. I'm your host, Chris Daly, and as you know, this season I am focusing on what I call everyday heroes. That's right, people who seem like normal folks, living their lives, doing what we all do, but they go above and beyond and do something extra. The true superheroes of our society. My guest today is Rob Gilbert. I discovered him through a podcast called Success Hotline. He is an amazing inspiration with an amazing story. All right, everybody join me in welcoming Rob Gilbert to the show. Rob, how are you doing today?
Oh, thank you for having me. You usually have people from New Jersey or...
I have people from all over the world.
Oh,
so
good.
I don't discriminate.
Okay.
Nice. So the reason I invited you on the show is because I caught your podcast. Can't believe I hadn't seen it before or heard it before, and probably listened to 100 episodes in one sitting. And it's fascinating. So if you could, give a quick overview of what the podcast is.
Well, basically, there's a phone line and a podcast, and every day for 31 years, I leave about a 3-minute message meant to be motivational, inspirational. It's 3 minutes. I think of it as the world's longest running seminar. Because one of my favorite quotes is, it's better to do a little a lot than a lot a little. So every day you get a little bite. You don't eat the whole elephant. Like if you go to a weekend seminar, that's like eating the whole elephant. You're just getting a little piece every single day. And, that's basically it. If you wanted to call the phone line number is 973-743-4690, or you could go to Success Hotline wherever you get your podcasts.
Nice. Well, let's jump way back. Talk about where you grew up.
Well, I grew up in Boston, Massachusetts, very close to Fenway Park, and So I went through high school in Boston, then I spent 15 years in undergraduate and graduate school at UMass Amherst, and then for the last 43, I've only had one real job. I've been teaching at the same college for 43 years, Montclair State University.
Wow. And when you said on the podcast, this is message number 11,000 something, I did some quick math, and you alluded to it already, 31 years.
I started on January 22nd, 1992.
Wow. And what made you start? And what was the motivation?
Well, while I was in graduate school, I was a high school wrestling coach. And then my main area of focus is sports psychology. Now I'm a college professor, and I'm just about to start one of my graduate classes for second semester. And I had this vision of the obvious, that I meet with my graduate students once a week, 2.5 hours on a Monday night. When I used to be a high school wrestling coach, I would train these kids 5, 6, sometimes 7 days a week. I said, there's something wrong here. Because if I trained my kids once a week, nothing would ever happen. Like when you get to be my age, I'm 76. If you work out one day a week, that's the day you're going to have a heart attack. It's better not to work out. Don't work out if you're only going to do once a week. So, I'm saying, how can I be with my students every day, even though I see them once a week? So I said, I'm going to leave a message on my phone line. I found a way to remember Radio Shack? I got a Radio Shack recorder, and I could get a 3-minute outgoing message. So I started leaving messages when the semester started in January, and I said, well, I'll just do it for 14 weeks, which is how long the semester is.
Yeah.
By the end of the 14 weeks, I had people calling from all over the world. I didn't promote it, but people just told people. And so I was going to do just 98 messages. I was going to do 98 messages, like the 98 Secrets of Sports Psychology. But I just kept going, and I've never stopped.
Nice. That's amazing because, back in the day, I heard about these joke lines and things like that.
Yeah.
But never heard of anything just so positive as this. I love it.
Well, I just don't understand why there aren't more people doing this, because I mean, I like seminars. I've never met anybody in my life who has attended more seminars than I have. I mean, I've gone to everybody forever, and I love seminars, but the thing is, you're not going to get it in a seminar. You got to get it. You got to do a lot, and it's by how do you eat an elephant? One bite at a time. 1 day at a time. AA. You just got to do it 1 day at a time. And I'm not saying that any one of my messages is going to change your life, but one message, just might.
No, I absolutely love that, and if people take nothing more from this conversation than doing a lot. That is such wisdom. I love that.
Well, I think I must tell that to my students. I mean, that is the secret. I mean, in sports, how do you get to what they call unconscious competent when you do things without thinking? You have to do it over and over and over and over again.
Yep.
What does every student in the world do? I mean, students who are athletes, their coaches show them exactly how to train. Okay, we're going to study. We're going to practice 2 hours every day. What do they do in school? Okay, I'm going to pull an all-nighter. So imagine you're a football coach, and you say, our first game is September 7th. Why don't we meet at September 6th and pull an all-nighter, and we'll see how we do. It won't work out that way.
Can you paraphrase what this morning's message was?
Well, this morning's message was about the unfortunate passing of the great Dick Fosbury, the Fosbury flop.
Yep.
I went to a lecture by a very, very noted Yale professor who studies genius. And this is many, many years ago, before COVID, 5-10 years ago. And he's talking about Michelangelo, and he's talking about all, Edison. He's talking about all these geniuses, Madame Curie. And I said, are there any geniuses in the area of sports? He says, only one, Dick Fosbury. And Fosbury, who was not a good high school athlete, was a high jumper, and he's the one that just figured out intuitively to go over the bar backwards. You know who I'm talking about?
Oh, yeah, definitely. Yeah.
And I think he won the Olympic gold medal in 1968. And so the professor from Yale, he said, the true measure of a genius is how you change contemporaries, I mean, do you, the Beatles are great, but the Beatles really didn't change music. I mean, it was like Chuck Berry, Elvis. They were the change agents. Dick Fosbury, every single gold medalist in the high jump since 1968 has done the Fosbury flop. He totally revolutionized it, and he died just a few days ago. So it was about him, in memoriam. But but the whole thing, the whole message isn't meant to be doom and gloom. I mean, Dick Fosbury, it just, he didn't go out there with a a protractor and a tape measure. I mean, it just came to him. And all of us have great ideas, but do we put them into use, you know? We all have great recipes, but do we ever market them? So everybody has world-class ideas, but he's the one that actually put it to use and became famous forevermore.
Yeah, definitely. So during this tenure of these inspirational messages, have you had troubles along the way?
No, not at all. Other than people threatening me, other than no, I mean every once in a while I get a crank caller and who threatens my life, but no, I mean it's been a pure joy. And before you paint me to be some saint, let me tell you the truth. I am not trying to help anybody. I'm trying to help myself. Because in the end, who am I motivating? I'm motivating me. Right. And it's true for all of us. If you want something, give it away. So, I mean, I refuse to go to a class, and before every class I teach, I look at the door that the kids just walked in. I said, when these kids leave, they are going to be more motivated and more inspired than when they came in. So if they're going to be more motivated and more inspired in my class, who has to be motivated and inspired? Me. So while I'm recording my messages every morning on the phone, other people are listening to them, but who's also listening to them? Me. So I think one of the big mistakes people make, especially in the area of performance. See, my area is called sports psychology, but it's really performance psychology. Whether you're an athlete, whether you're a musician, whether you're an artist, whether you're a teacher, we're all performing. Like right now, you and I are performing. And the thing is, you could either listen to that little voice in your head. We all have this little voice that talks to us, or we could talk to ourselves. It's much better to talk to yourself than listen to yourself because you have no control over what that little voice is going to say. But we do have control when you say things like, I can do this, I can do this. And, this is all about affirmations and stuff like this. So when I'm giving the message out to the world, I'm giving the message to myself first. So every day I'm talking to myself. I'm motivating myself. As a matter of fact, if you look at Dick Fosbury, when he won the Olympic gold medal, he was at the end of the runway talking to himself. He used to flex his right hand and he used to talk to himself. He was a very, very cerebral guy.
I love that. And I love your allusion to the fact that it's better to drive your car than ride in your car. A few weeks ago we had something that you might have heard of in Texas. It's called the Super Bowl. And it's amazing. The Super Bowl, the most watched event on TV every year. And at any one time, there are 22 people on the field, but billions of people watching. We have too many spectators and too few participants. Now, I'm not saying you shouldn't watch a football game now and then, but that shouldn't be your life. Right. I mean, it's all right to go to an art museum, but it's much better to do your own art. Somebody once said it's much better to write your own sonnet than to memorize all of Shakespeare's. So I think we have to get more into the participation and less into we have a whole culture, especially, I don't know if sports talk radio is as popular in Texas as it is up here, but I mean, everybody, is Aaron Rodgers going to come to the Jets? I mean, they're on the third week of this, I mean, this is the exception. I mean, go outside and throw your own football with your kid. Make him the next Aaron Rodgers. Make the Jets sign him. I have a friend that once told me he was an autograph collector. He said, don't collect autographs. Make your autograph worth collecting. Yeah. Yeah, I agree with that. I love the fact that I'm getting, just dozens of tidbits of just amazing content here from you.
Well, you got to ask me, has there ever been a perfect message?
Okay, let me ask you. Has there ever been a perfect message?
Well, there hasn't been a perfect message, but I feel a kinship with you. You and I are looking for things like this.
Yeah.
but there has been a perfect answer to a question. So let me take you back to my high school, Boston Latin School. I was in the 8th grade, and it was about 1959, 1960, and they had a father and son sports night, a sports banquet. And the keynote speaker was the retired, undefeated heavyweight champion of the world, Rocky Marciano. He didn't live far from the school. He lived in Brockton, Massachusetts. So here's a guy that was undefeated. There's never been an undefeated heavyweight champion since. So after he gives about a 15 or 20-minute talk, what do you think the first question is? Mr. Marciano, if you came out of retirement, could you beat the current heavyweight champion, Floyd Patterson? And he said, well, if I said I could, you'd say I'm bragging. But if I said I couldn't, I'd be lying.
I love that.
Isn't that the perfect answer?
That is wonderful. Yeah, definitely. So in all the years of doing this, I assume it has opened a door or two, some opportunities. What of those have shown themselves to you?
Well, let me tell you, probably the nicest thing that has happened as a result of doing Success Hotline. As we speak, I am very proud to say and very happy to say that even though I'm 76 years old, my mother is still with me, and she's 100 years old. Wow. And last June 8th, we had her 100th birthday party. Mm-hmm. So, of course, I had people from the hotline send me. I said I wanted about 2 or 3 birthday cards from each and every state. Which state do you think I got the most birthday cards from? If I gave you 50 guesses, you'd probably guess this state number 50.
Really?
I got more cards from Wyoming than any other state.
Wow, you're right. That would be about 49.
But one of the really nice byproducts of doing Success Hotline is at her birthday party, we read her a letter from a United States Senator who calls my hotline. And he wrote a handwritten letter to my mother. And his name is Cory Booker.
Oh, wow.
And I don't know if you know this, but Cory Booker was an All-American high school football player, and he went to Stanford on football scholarship. He was a great tight end.
Yep, that's very cool. So what other opportunities have come up, though? I assume that I'm not the first person outside of your listenership that noticed you and decided, hey, I want to call this guy up and meet him.
Well, I'm a professional speaker, a motivational speaker, and because of Success Hotline, I go to places I probably wouldn't have gone to if I didn't do Success Hotline. But the important thing is just when, after I leave a 3-minute message, this isn't true on the podcast, this is true on the phone line, I leave a 3-minute message and there's a beep, then you have a minute to talk to me. And the nicest thing is when I get a call at 3 a.m. and I could hear a troubled voice on the other line, and they say, thank you. I mean, that's all I need. I mean, I don't need somebody to hire me in Walla Walla, Washington or something, but just to know that I'm making a difference. And, that's what you and I are in the business of. And there's nothing that makes me feel better than knowing that I'm making a difference.
You couldn't have said it better. I mean, that's what more is there to life than making a positive difference for people? Yeah.
And I also want my listeners to know that I look at this as the world's longest seminar, but in the 31 years, I'm not selling anything. Once in a while I mention a book, or once in a while, but it's not like. As a matter of fact, it costs me about $12,000 a year to do the hotline. Mm-hmm. So it's really it sounds trite, a labor of love, but I don't think it's an interesting story. I once met a woman who was a marriage therapist, and I'm 76 years old, and I've never been married. And she got fascinated a while. How come he's never been married, all that? So I said, well, I don't know if this is ever going to happen, but how do I know when I find the right partner? How do I know when I find the right woman? And she said something just like Rocky Marciano, it's almost perfect. She said, well, here's how to tell if you find the right partner. The right partner is not the person you could live with. The right person is the person you cannot live without.
Amen. I can testify to that one.
Yeah. So I could not, people say, how do you do the message every single day? And to tell you the truth, I couldn't not do the message. I mean, it's such a part of me. I could not do it. If that's incorrect, that's a double negative, but I think you get the point.
Yeah, so has anything like illness slowed you? Do you batch record anything? How do you manage that? No,
I've done the messages from the hospital. I've done the messages when I've been under anesthesia. I've been messages. I was at a Buddhist retreat up in Vermont, and I took my cell phone, and it was I couldn't. In the building was total silence, so I couldn't do the messages in the building where we were meditating. So I had to find an outdoor outhouse, and it was like 30 below zero, and I did it. So I've done it under every possible circumstance. But basically, I just wake up in the morning, and I've had other people that wanted to do the hotline. One guy who's a pretty famous marketing writer, and so he wanted me to teach him how to do the hotline. So after about 3 weeks, he said, "I'm quitting." I said, "Why are you quitting doing it?" He said, "I can't write 350, 400 words every day."
Yeah,
I said, "Who writes it?" I said, "This isn't classical music. This is jazz. I just wake up in the morning and a message." See, here's an interesting story. When I was in graduate school, I don't know if you've ever had this situation, that I'm back in Boston, and I wake up during spring break, and all of a sudden I have this fear go through my body. I had to do, in one of my graduate classes, a paper and a 2.5-hour seminar on a topic in the early part of May, and it's the middle of March, and I haven't done anything yet. And so I asked my mother, I said, "Do you have any manila folders?" So she had a folder, and in the folder I wrote cardiovascular disease. That's what I had to do my topic on. And I said, "I'm going to carry this folder with me every moment of every day until the project is totally complete." Because I was afraid that I was going to forget all and not do anything. So I go to breakfast, and my mother said, "Why do you want the file folder for?" And I told her the whole story. Then later that morning, I saw my childhood friend Eddie, and he said, "What are you carrying the file folder with?" And I told him that I have to do this project. So I went home for dinner that night, and my mother ripped out something from Reader's Digest. She said, "I was reading Reader's Digest, and I found this article on cardiovascular disease." An hour later, Eddie calls me up. "Oh, on the educational station, there's a show on cardiovascular disease." So the whole thing is nature abhors a vacuum. If you go around with an empty file folder, people are going to give you stuff to fill it. If I give you an ornate bird cage, but I don't put a bird in it, somebody is going to give you a bird because nature abhors a vacuum. So, so every morning I have a 3-minute hole to fill, a 3-minute vacuum, and something happens during the day. And the best thing that happens, you asked me before about what are great things that happen. My best stories, my best anecdotes, my best quotes come from my callers.
Nice.
Somebody just left me this message the other day, and they said Picasso was in his hometown. He was at a market one morning, and a woman sees him. He says, "Oh, Mr. Picasso, I'm a big fan." And she had "I'm an artist too. I have my sketchbook. Could you just draw a picture or something and sign it?" And he said, "Oh, sure, I'd like to." So in about 30 seconds, he sketches something and signs Picasso. She said, "Oh, thank you so much. Thank you for so much." and she's just about to go away, and he says, "Oh, ma'am, that will cost $1 million." And she said, $1 million? That took you 30 seconds. And there was a sparkle in his eye, and he said, "It took me 30 years to do that in 30 seconds."
Right on, right on.
So in the area that you and I are both interested in, we see unbelievable skill, like somebody you might remember named Roger Staubach, and we think, oh, he was born talented. No, he wasn't. He was trained talented.
Yeah. The phrase I often hear in relation to musical artists is they were a 20-year overnight sensation.
Yeah, that's right. Well, the other thing is that when you come to New York, how do you get to Carnegie Hall? Practice. Yeah.
Right on. So what about friendships that you've developed over the years as a direct result of this?
Friendships?
Yeah.
Well, I think you and I are going to become friends because we have so many similar interests. I have like an affinity group of people who love sports, and people who love stories, and people who are speakers, and we talk the same language. As I get older and older, I'm not any less interested in sports, but I'm not interested. Like I'm from Boston, so I have to be the Red Sox and Celtics and Bruins. But I really don't care if they win. I don't care who wins. I care about if there's a great story. I want the story. So when I'm more interested in watching the Super Bowl ads because there's more likely to be a great story in the ads than there is in the game. But I'm just interested, like the Picasso story. I mean, that says volumes. It's sort of like the Bruce Lee quote, "I'm not afraid of the man who has 10,000 kicks. I fear the man who has one kick and has practiced it 10,000 times."
Right. Yeah. No doubt. I love that. And that's why I do think, and I may be presumptuous, but I do think we're going to develop a great friendship just because we have so much in common. And it may just be your gift that you have. And I'm sure all your listeners feel connected to you like I do.
Well, let's talk about your listeners. Because like at the beginning, we're talking about, right now they're spectators and not participating. Right. So guess what? The free lunch ends right now. If your listeners have any great quotes or any great stories or any great video clips, I need them. I'm a desperate man. I have a hotline every day that I need to fill. So if you have any great stories like the Marciano story, or you have a great story like the Picasso story, my email address, now if you want to know how much I'm into stories, my email address is sendmeastory@AOL.com. Send me a story at AOL.com. And my phone number is, if I could ever help you, 973-985-4138. 973-985-4138. And I'd be very happy to help anybody any way I can. But I am especially voraciously hungry for stories, anecdotes, and quotes. They don't have to be about sports. They don't have to be about Picasso. They could be about the three frogs sitting on a log. And this is the story I've told the most on the hotline. It's a riddle. There are three frogs sitting on the log. And how many frogs? Let me tell it right. There are three frogs sitting on the log, and one frog decided to jump off the log. The question is, how many frogs are left on the log? After telling that story thousands of times, people say, well, that's very simple. 3 minus 1 equals 2. I said, yeah, but it's a riddle. There's a trick. The answer is 3. And people say, why 3? Because just because the frog decided doesn't mean it did it. There's a big difference between decision and action. And when your decisions become your actions, then you're onto something. And you're saying, what is your all-time favorite story? Well, my all-time favorite story usually has to do with recency. Like, my all-time favorite story probably is a Picasso story. But before we end, I want to tell I tell many, many stories about Muhammad Ali. And I love to go to book signings. And his trainer was a man named Angelo Dundee, who trained many boxing champions. And so I went to a book signing with Dundee, and unfortunately there were only about 20 or 30 people there. And, he gave a talk, and at the end of the talk, during the questions and answers, I said, Mr. Dundee, who was the hottest working athlete you ever trained? He said, oh, that's easy, Muhammad. Muhammad outworked them all. And I never heard that Ali was that hot a worker, and he was. And I found a quote in a biography. And Ali said, I hated every minute of training. I said, wait a second. Your trainer said you were the hottest working athlete, and you're saying you hated it. But here's a whole quote. I hated every minute of training, but I said to myself, don't quit, suffer now, and I could spend the rest of my life as a champion. So I tell my students, I hated every minute of organic chemistry, but I said to myself, don't quit, suffer now, and I could spend the rest of my life as a doctor. I hated every minute of Dr. Gilbert's class, but I said to myself, don't quit, suffer now, I could spend the rest of my life as a college graduate. So here's the story. Ali used to train at a place called Deer Park, Pennsylvania, and people could come play a few bucks and watch him prepare for his fights. So one day, he's in the ring doing sit-ups, and he's counting, 211, 212, 213, and he finally stops doing the sit-ups, and he gets out of the ring, and his handlers, towel him down, and one of his fans comes up, hey, champ, how many sit-ups did you do? And Ali very politely said, well, to tell you the truth, I don't know. He said, well, what do you mean you don't know? I heard you counting in the ring. He said, oh, I only start counting when they start hurting.
I love that.
And that's why Ali is a champion. So imagine if you're a student listening to this, only start counting when you start getting bored studying. Corsicana, Texas. Do you know about the Netflix cheer? Navarro Junior College?
Yeah.
So the coach there said, we don't practice until we get it right. We practice until we can't get it wrong.
Nice.
That might be the best sports psychology advice ever.
I love that. Well, I tell you, I have loved every minute of speaking with you, and I am just grateful that not only did I decide to reach out, but I took action and called you.
Yeah.
Cool. Well, Mr. Gilbert, thank you so much for sitting down with me, sharing your story with my audience, and I will once again implore the audience to reach out and get some of your daily inspiration, because it's wonderful stuff.
Well, and I can't wait to get some of this stuff from some of your listeners. And I implore people, if you want to motivate yourself, start doing a hotline, or even on your outgoing phone messages every day, leave a quote, or start a blog or something, and be selfish. I mean, I'm totally selfish. Don't do it for other people. Do it for yourself, because you're going to benefit more than anybody else.
Right on. Rob Gilbert, again, thank you so much for sitting down, sharing some of your fascinating story and your wisdom.
Well, it's been my pleasure. Thank you.